Thank you, Mark, very much for this beautiful introduction. After that introduction, I always think now it's better if I don't say anything. I can only disappoint you. But let me say immediately that I don't know if I'm the last one, but I don't have any intentions to make any conclusion of what we are talking to in last 3 days. But as a matter of fact, to touch some of the concepts, some of the issues and some of the terms that we were discussing, and maybe to give to all of us a little bit more of the substance to think. I don't know, is it optimistic or pessimistic, but anyway. And as you can see, we were generally discussing last 3 days about very big topics and sometimes very pretentious subjects. So I do not resist to be, not trying to resist to be kind of pretentious, but talking about the big concept like the New World Order and the cultural diplomacy. So let me start with the question that probably we all have. What is the world order and does that exist at all? We can argue in either direction. Certainly that world order does not exist in the physical terms. It does not exist as a continent. It does not exist even in geopolitical terms like, for example, state, sovereign state. It does not exist even as a treaty between the states. It does not even exist as some kind of deal of understanding between states. So what is really the new or the world order? The world order is actually just a term, definition or description that we are using to describe what's going on in a particular moment of the history in the world, but more than to describe what us diplomats, and I like to think and act as a diplomat, not just to understand it, but to use it maybe to predict it and probably, hopefully, sometimes successfully to prevent the bad things that can happen. And, you know, the concept itself of the world order was used the first time after the peace in Westphalia in 1648 in Europe. And the term of world order was reflecting for many centuries actually only Europe, which is understandable having in mind our very egocentrical European look and sometimes, as somebody said before, very arrogant look into the things. By the end of 20th century, there was a big debate in the intellectual part of the world among the people who are dealing with the foreign policy. Do we really need a concept like a world order, and particularly a concept which is very much related to the world order, and that is balance of power? And there was a very famous book that I believe all of you are familiar, written by Francis Fukuyama. The title of the book is The End of the History, where he was arguing that actually we don't need such a concept because the development of liberal democracy and free market came to the moment when we really do not need to look into anything like a balance of powers. Approximately same time, professor of Mr. Fukuyama from the Harvard University came first with an article published in a Foreign Affairs Journal and later with a book. The title of the article, it's very well known now throughout the world. The title of the article was The Clash of Civilization. And it was considered very controversial in that time because we lived in naive picture, I should dare to say, Wilsonian picture of the world described by Fukuyama, that actually all big divisions are behind us. The book was also controversial, but the title of the book was a little bit different. And the title of the book, which is forgotten typically now, but book is very, very often quoted. It became bestseller after September 11. But the full title of the book is The Clash of Civilization and re-establishment of the New World Order. And that is actually what I rather want to concentrate to the second part, subtitle of the book, rather than the title, because I do believe that we are entering into whatever we call it, re-establishment or establishment of the New World Order, but I do hope that that will not end with the clash of civilization. So, when we are talking about world order, for the first time in the history, that really means the globe, the entire world. Why? Because the means of communication now the way how they were not in the time when they were using that term, even at the beginning, or even in the middle of 20th century, when the term was practically almost always reserved to what was going on in Europe. Right now, we can follow what was happening through the history through different ages into at least 5 important parts of the world that were having their own form of world order, and that it is right now somehow getting together and even geographically in the same space. So when we look into Europe, what is happening in the European part of the world order? There was a period of big optimism through creation of European Union. There was a period of big successes, and I do believe and still hope that European Union is the project of success. However, European Union was primarily concentrated to itself and without looking what is actually going into other parts of the world. One of those mistakes was that European Union was, for example, ignoring what are the broader aspects of accepting or not accepting Turkey in their desire to come closer to European Union. As you know very well, from 2003 till 2006, Turkey was trying really to do everything to get closer to European Union. Reaction of Brussels, or particular part of European Union, was mostly negative. It was different, but mostly negative. And that pushed development of Turkey into different directions. Because I was in a very similar position, in the same time Croatia was a candidate country with Turkey, we were doing our lobbying together. I could hear what our colleagues are thinking from different parts of the world. But nobody was thinking what the consequence will be if Turkey is not getting closer to European Union. The consequence was that the president, in that time Prime Minister, who I really believe wanted to get Turkey into European Union, turned direction and went into the direction of his, many will say, Islamic roots. Now President Erdogan is not even talking anymore about need or necessity of Turkey to get into European Union. And Turkey is, I will touch Turkey a little bit later, is extremely important country in this kind of brief description of the new world order that I want to give you as something to think about. European Union was also naive in not thinking, when thinking about developing its part of the world order, about Russia. Huge mistake, because when we follow the development of the world orders, then there is a clear path of development in Russia. From even the Great, through Katarina the Great, through Stalin, to Putin, most of the Russian leaders, with the short periods when that was not the case, in case of Gorbachev, who had a generally different idea, or Yeltsin, who I don't know if he had any ideas, but most of the Russian leaders wanted to have strong Russia. Mother Russia as a strong country was the leading concept throughout the history. That's exactly what Putin is doing right now. In political terms, nothing less, nothing more. I very much agree with what Henry Kissinger said, that it is wrong to compare Putin with Hitler, but it is proper to compare Putin with the Russian Tsars. So where is the mistake now? I mean, that is, I believe, the fact. And if you are a diplomat, then you are looking into the facts and how that facts will affect the future events. I'm one of those who fight really very, very hardly for my country to get into European Union and to get independence from communism and get democracy. And I'm certainly very much supportive into everything what was going on in Ukraine. And I have big, big sympathy and many friends in Ukraine. But whoever in Brussels was thinking the decision concerning Ukraine will not be seriously considered with the happenings in Russia was making a big mistake. Whoever thought that Russia, or Mr. Putin, as the really leader of Russia in this moment, will ignore the fact that once when NATO and European Union enter into Ukraine, or the other way around, then Russian fleet, which was based in Crimea, has to move. I mean, from an international legal point of view, it's a very complex issue because there are several treaties regulating that, and I'm not going to go into details. But to everyone who would carefully study what's going on in Moscow was rather without any surprise when Putin decided to take offensive action. To make myself clear, I'm not justifying that. I'm just explaining that. So I'm trying to be diplomat without emotional approach, but trying to understand what was going on. In a way, it is similar what is with Russia's position in Syria. To make it a little bit more complicated and a little bit more complex, I think that Putin is trying to do something which is very much in accordance with Huntington's prediction, trying to create alliance of countries based on the religion. So alliance of the countries of Orthodox religion. Where do I find argument on that? In what is happening in Eastern Europe, in our neighborhood. For example, we have NATO just issued the invitation for Montenegro to become a member of NATO. From point of view of Europe, that's very good movement. From point of view of Montenegro, it's up to their people to decide, and I think that they decided that they want to go into that direction. But from point of view of Russia, that is not something that they want to see. And what do we have in Montenegro? Even yesterday, we have a protest, we have a happening of the people, how they call it popularly there. We have we have clear attempts to prevent Montenegro to go into that direction. So we have Russia who is seriously involved in the world happenings, which it's not surprising, and it is seriously involved in a creation of the new world order. Of course, we have United States, which was dominant power throughout the 20th century, which is still no question and no doubts about that, the strongest military power in the world. But as Kissinger said, I believe very correctly, United States is caught in some kind of ambivalent political or diplomatical paradigmatical way of thinking. In one way is the protection of national interests, which is basically the task of every country. But on the other hand, it is that kind of very often abstract idea of spreading democracy and freedom throughout the world. That is also sometimes very difficult to describe, but even more difficult to understand from different parts of the world. Good example of that, some kind of bipolar approach to the things is what happened in Egypt. First, you had the United States got a deal with President Mubarak by which he was supposed to gradually leave by organizing democratic elections and leaving historical scene. But in a matter of literally, in a matter of 2 days, United States White House changed the position and they insist that immediately Mubarak will leave. Again, I'm not the kind of guy who will have any kind of sympathy toward the people like Mubarak. I'm, again, just trying to be objective in a phenomena. So what was the consequence of that? Some in the United States rushed declaring that the big revolution, the Arab Spring, Egyptian Spring, the building of democracy, in reality, what happened was really chaos. So we have a lack of real leadership on the side of the so-called Western world. We cannot see that leadership in the United States, and we cannot see that leadership in the European Union. We do see that leadership in Russia, but is that kind of direction that we want to see the world to move. Then we have another extremely important player, and that is China. For a century and century, China had its own world order, which was defined by the fact that they had emperor, that the time was measured different way, that they were actually spreading their culture, that they always thought that it is superior to any other culture. And to be historically fair, Russia was not spreading outside of the Asian continent, at least not for the last several centuries. However, what do we see today? Today, where is Russia? Sorry, I made a mistake, not Russia, China. Where is China present? China is present to every part of the world, particularly Africa, but also partly Europe, every part of the world where there is a global infrastructural transitional way of traveling from one part of the world to the other part of the world. For the first time, after several centuries, when Russia stopped, sorry, I don't know why I'm making this stupid mistake, China started to build ships, big ships. China started to build airplanes, which was never part of the idea. Recently, we had the Prime Minister of China in Belgrade. And Belgrade is geographically, no question about that, pretty close to the heart of Europe. He came and in pre-prepared speech, he said, I'm happy to be in this most western part of Asia. That's easy to check. Or what to say when Mr. Xi, the president of China, he arrives to London and it is treated like the Chinese emperor, not like the president of ideologically very different country than what it is United Kingdom. So obviously China is a player, I think predictable player, not necessarily dangerous player in this moment, but the player who will continue to play its own game without allowing to be influenced by the other. I was surprised to see how many of my colleagues in the United States were surprised when United States introduced the sanction against Russia, that the first thing was that Russia signed the deal, the treaty with China. I think that was, of course, directly related. So, in that part of and that description of the world and on several aspects of that global world, we have, as I said already, extremely important country, Turkey, which is in a way Islamic country, and until the end of Ottoman Empire, until the Ataturk after First World War, was actually the only part that was really spreading the idea of universal Islamic faith as the way how it was proclaimed by Prophet Muhammad in 7th century. But after Ataturk, obviously, Ottoman empires didn't exist in that ideological, not geographical way, and Turkey changed quite differently. But Turkey had an extremely important position, being in that period of that geographical position and being in that political position in between two worlds. I am not going too much into details of every aspect of every kind of civilization, if that is the proper word, but just touching all. So now we come to in this moment, the most often mentioned part of the global picture of the world, and that is Islamic world. I very much agree with what was said by Professor Ali before me. I don't think that it is proper to use single term when we are talking about the Islamic world. As we could hear, it is even questionable when we talk about the religion, can we use the singular terms, but certainly when it comes to the civilization, and I think that is, in a way, good news right now. To prove that, let me just mention that at this moment there are at least 7 conflicts inside the Islamic part of the world. So I don't think that is proper to use that term, but when we are talking about it, we are concentrate primarily on one part of the Islamic world, and that is unfortunately, but understandable, the most extremistic part of the world. So we have the picture of the world that it is characterized the best and frankly on a pessimistic way by President Putin, who said recently, when somebody made a statement that Russia cannot be considered a superpower because of the economic situation, he said something, every country that has a nuclear power is a superpower. I hope that that was not meant as a threat, but I do know that that is the fact. So let me finish by that, and let me finish that I do believe in diplomacy as the only way how to resolve that, and cultural diplomacy the only way how to make the world better, but unfortunately, even traditional diplomacy and particularly cultural diplomacy works only on a long terms and not on a short terms. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zuzul, and I fully agree. Unfortunately, that's the challenge of culture diplomacy, that it really does take time, it takes patience, and there's no quick and easy short-term solutions in the field. We do have time for one quick question, though, or comment, and then hopefully Dr. Zuzul will make himself available later today to have a few other opportunities for dialogue. We are under some time pressure, though, so one brief question or comment. Please introduce yourself as well.
Hello, I'm Irina Mikhailo. I'm Ukrainian. I would like to ask about cooperation between Western countries and Russia about Syria might mean trading Ukraine in order to come to an agreement. What can you comment about that?
I do not believe as a matter of principle, but I also do not believe as pragmatical diplomat in those kind of trading. Any kind of trading that it is made on the expense of the third party, I don't think that it's not only unjust and unfair, I don't think that that is sustainable in a terms that it can bring to any kind of the solution. I think that those are entirely different issues. I do hope that the solution for Ukraine will be found by the way that Ukraine people will have opportunity to decide what they want to decide. But I do believe that that cannot be achieved without involvement of the broader world and without considering what is the position of Russia. I do not believe that the Western world will come and to start a war against Russia in Ukraine. And sorry for being maybe very pragmatical, I do not see the way how the Russian army will leave Ukraine simply like that. But I do hope that there is a solution for Ukraine. In this moment, I'm a little bit more concerned in what's going on in that arena around Syria, because I think that the picture is much, much more complicated, that we have many more players in the game, and several of them that can use the same phrase, if not the threat that was used by President Putin. And the last, but maybe not the least, although it's not good to finish on that pessimist note, it is very close to Armageddon, geographically. Hopefully, only geographically.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Miomir Zuzul, thank you very, very much. Thank you.